Daniel Porter was elbow-deep in a broken water recycler when the alarm started screaming. He pulled his arm out of the machine and wiped the grease on his pants. Around him, the walls of Horizon 7 Research Station pulsed with red warning lights. This was not a drill. He grabbed his radio and called the control room. "This is Porter in Section 12. What is happening up there?" The voice that came back belonged to Commander Cole, and she sounded like she had seen a ghost. "Get to the main airlock, Daniel. Now, we have visitors." Daniel ran through the metal corridors of the station. Horizon 7 was not a big place. It held maybe 60 people, all of them scientists or support staff like him. They floated out here in the system, orbiting a massive gas giant, studying whatever the researchers found interesting. Daniel did not understand most of their work. He just kept the station running. When he reached the main airlock area, he found most of the crew already gathered there. They stood in nervous clusters, whispering to each other. Through the reinforced windows, Daniel could see it. A ship. But calling it a ship felt wrong. It was more like a floating palace made of silver and crystal, so large it blocked out the stars behind it. Someone whispered near him. Daniel felt his stomach drop. Everyone knew about They were one of the oldest civilizations in the known galaxy. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. They rarely spoke to younger species, and when they did, it usually meant trouble. Commander Cole stood at the front of the crowd, her face pale but her voice steady. "They have requested permission to board. I have agreed." A murmur of fear rippled through the crew. Marsh, a pilot Daniel had become friends with over the past year, appeared at his side. She was a small woman with short brown hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "This is bad," said quietly. "The do not just show up for friendly visits." Daniel nodded. He noticed he was still holding his repair tools, a wrench and a diagnostic scanner. He probably looked ridiculous, but there was no time to put them away. The inner airlock door was already cycling open. The first ones through were soldiers. They stood 7 feet tall with pale blue skin and armor that seemed to be made of living metal. Their faces were beautiful in a cold way, with high cheekbones and eyes that glowed faintly silver. They moved with the easy grace of predators who had never met anything they could not kill. The soldiers spread out and took positions around the room. Then they turned and faced the airlock, standing at perfect attention. She came through last. Queen of the Thousand Stars was the most elegant being Daniel had ever seen. She wore robes of deep purple that flowed around her like water. Her skin was the same pale blue as her guards, but it seemed to shine with an inner light. A crown of thin silver metal rested on her head, woven through hair that was pure white and fell past her shoulders. She looked ancient and young at the same time, and her presence filled the room like a weight pressing down on everyone. Commander Cole stepped forward and bowed. "Your Majesty, we are honored by your visit. How may Horizon 7 serve the Empire?" The Queen did not answer. Her glowing eyes swept across the gathered humans with an expression of mild disgust. Daniel had seen that look before. It was the way some people looked at insects. Then her gaze reached him. She stopped. Daniel stood there in his stained work clothes, holding his wrench, surrounded by scientists in clean uniforms. He was nobody. He was not even supposed to be here. He had just come to fix the water recycler. The Queen's eyes went wide. Her mouth opened slightly. For the first time, emotion crossed her perfect face. It looked almost like terror. Her guards noticed the change in her. They raised their weapons, scanning for threats, but the Queen raised one hand and they froze. Then slowly, the ruler of the Empire lowered herself to her knees. She pressed her palms flat against the floor and bent forward until her forehead nearly touched the metal deck. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. Daniel looked behind him, certain that someone important must be standing there. Maybe some secret ambassador he had not noticed. Maybe a hidden camera for some kind of strange joke. There was nothing, just the wall. He turned back. The queen was still kneeling. Her guards looked like they were about to explode from confusion. Several of them had dropped to one knee as well, though they clearly did not understand why. Daniel said. It was not his finest moment. Commander Cole found her voice first. Your Majesty, what is the meaning of this? The queen slowly raised her head. Her silver eyes locked onto Daniel with an intensity that made him want to run. When she spoke, her voice shook slightly. That seemed wrong. A being this powerful should not sound afraid. Forgive me, she said. I did not know, none of us knew. Knew what? Daniel asked. His voice came out higher than he wanted. The queen rose gracefully to her feet, but she did not take her eyes off him. You bear the mark of the architects. You carry the signature of the gods themselves in your blood. Daniel waited for her to laugh. To say she was joking, she did not. I am a maintenance engineer, he said slowly. I fix broken toilets and air filters. I think you have the wrong person. There is no mistake. The queen gestured to one of her guards, who hurried forward with a small device. May I scan you? I must confirm what my eyes already tell me. Daniel looked at Commander Cole. She looked back at him with an expression that said she had no idea what to do either. Finally, Daniel shrugged. Sure, I guess. Scan away. The guard ran the device over Daniel from head to toe. It beeped and hummed. The guard looked at the results, and his pale blue face went even paler. It is true, my queen. The mark is present in his genetic code. It is unmistakable. The queen closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, she seemed to have found some of her composure. The architects created the hyperspace gates. They seeded life across this galaxy. They are the gods my people have for 10,000 years, and they left behind a prophecy. She paused. They said that one day the marked one would appear, and when that happened, everything would change. Daniel felt the wrench slip from his fingers and clang against the floor. Everyone in the room was staring at him now, humans and alike. I am from Ohio, he said weakly. My parents were teachers. There has to be some kind of mistake. The queen shook her head slowly. There is no mistake, marked one, and I fear your simple life has just ended. Outside the windows, more ships were already appearing in the distance. Word was spreading. And Daniel Porter, the maintenance engineer from Ohio, stood in the middle of it all with no idea what to do next. The next 3 hours were the most chaotic of Daniel's life. The Queen's guards formed a protective circle around him, which would have been flattering if it did not make him feel like a prisoner. Commander Cole was demanding explanations. The station crew was whispering and pointing, and more alien ships kept arriving every few minutes. Daniel sat in the station's small conference room with on one side and Commander Cole on the other. Across the table, Queen sat with 2 of her advisors. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Let me see if I understand this correctly, Commander Cole said. You believe that Daniel, our maintenance engineer, is some kind of chosen one from an ancient prophecy. The Queen's expression remained calm, but Daniel noticed her fingers tapping against the table. She was not as composed as she wanted to appear. The architects vanished from this galaxy over 3 million years ago, the Queen explained. Before they left, they created the hyperspace gates that allow travel between distant stars. They seeded life on thousands of worlds, and they left behind records, prophecies, warnings. My people have dedicated our civilization to studying and preserving their legacy. And this mark, Commander Cole pressed, how do you know it is real? One of the Queen's advisors, an older with lines on his face, leaned forward. The signature in his DNA is unmistakable. It uses encoding methods that no species in this galaxy can replicate. We have searched for the marked one for 10,000 years. We have tested millions of candidates. All of them failed. This human is the first true match we have ever found. Daniel raised his hand like he was back in school. Can I ask a question? Everyone looked at him. Why me? I have never done anything special. I have never even left the solar system until I took this job 3 years ago. Why would ancient gods put some kind of mark in my DNA? The queen shook her head slowly. That is the one thing we do not know. The architects worked on scales of time we cannot comprehend. Perhaps they placed the mark in your ancestors long ago, waiting for it to activate. Perhaps they foresaw this exact moment millions of years before it happened. We cannot say. Leaned forward. What does this mark actually do? Is Daniel in danger? The prophecy speaks of the final gate, the advisor said. There is a gate on our that has never opened. It has stood dormant since before my people achieved. The prophecy says that when the marked one appears, they will open the final gate, and what lies beyond will change the destiny of all life in the galaxy. Daniel felt sick. I do not want to change the destiny of all life in the galaxy. I want to go back to fixing the water recycler. The queen almost smiled at that. Almost. I understand this is overwhelming, marked one, but you must understand our position as well. My people have built our entire civilization around waiting for you. Some will worship you, some will fear you, and some will want to use you or destroy you. As if to prove her point, an alarm chimed. Commander Cole checked her communication device and went pale. We have 3 more ships arriving, she said. One is from the Dominion of Scales, and one is unidentified. The queen stood quickly. They are mercenaries and slavers. The Dominion will want to dissect him to learn the secrets of the mark. We cannot stay here. This station cannot protect him. We are not just going to hand over one of our people, Commander Cole said firmly. I am not asking you to hand him over. I am offering sanctuary. The queen looked directly at Daniel. Come with me to Prime. My fleet can protect you. My scholars can help you understand what you are, and perhaps together we can discover why the architects chose you. Daniel looked at, she was frowning. I do not trust them, said quietly. No offense, Your Majesty, but your people have never shown any interest in humanity before. Now suddenly you want to help. The queen accepted the criticism without anger. You are right to be suspicious. My people have been arrogant. We thought younger species like yours were beneath our notice, but the architects apparently disagreed. They chose a human to bear the mark. That means something. I am willing to admit that perhaps we have been wrong about your kind. More alarms sounded. Through the conference room window, Daniel could see ships maneuvering in the distance. Weapons were powering up. The situation was getting worse by the minute. If I go with you, Daniel said slowly, what happens to the people here? Will they be safe? The queen nodded. I will leave ships to guard this station. No one will harm them. And comes with me. His head snapped toward him. Daniel, you do not have to. Yes, I do. You are the only person here I actually trust. I am not doing this alone. The queen considered this for a moment, then nodded. Agreed. Your friend may accompany you. Commander Cole stood up. I want regular reports. I want to know that Daniel is safe, and I want your word that he will be returned if he asks to come home. You have my word, the queen said. He is not a prisoner, he is a guest, a very important guest. 30 minutes later, Daniel found himself walking through a corridor of living crystal toward the heart of the flagship. Walked beside him, her hand resting on the small pistol at her hip. She had refused to board without it, and surprisingly, the queen had allowed it. This is insane, Daniel muttered. Completely insane, agreed. I was supposed to finish fixing the water recycler today. Now I am apparently some kind of chosen one. Do you believe them, about the mark and the prophecy? Daniel thought about it. He remembered the scan, the way the guard's face had gone pale. He remembered the queen kneeling before him, the fear in her eyes. Whatever this was, it was real to them. I think they believe it, he said finally. Whether it is actually true, I have no idea, but something is going on, something I do not understand. They reached a large chamber that seemed to be some kind of viewing deck. The walls were transparent, showing the stars outside in perfect clarity. The Queen was waiting for them there, standing alone. "We will reach Prime in 12 days," she said. "I suggest you use that time to rest and prepare. When we arrive, there will be ceremonies. Scholars who wish to speak with you. Political leaders who want to see if you are real." "I am just a maintenance guy," Daniel said. "I do not know how to deal with any of that." The Queen turned to face him fully. "Then learn. The architects did not choose you by accident. There must be something in you that they valued, perhaps something you have not discovered yet." She left them alone in the viewing chamber. Daniel and stood in silence, watching the stars wheel past as the ship accelerated toward hyperspace. "We are really doing this," said. "We are really doing this," Daniel agreed. The ship hummed around them, and the stars blurred into streaks of light as they jumped into hyperspace. Behind them, the station grew smaller and smaller until it vanished entirely. Ahead of them lay the heart of an alien empire, and a gate that had waited millions of years to open. Daniel had no idea what he was supposed to do when they got there, but he was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, that was okay. Sometimes you did not need a plan. Sometimes you just needed to show up and do your best. It had worked for fixing broken machines. Maybe it would work for ancient prophecies too. The journey to Prime took 12 days, and Daniel spent most of that time feeling completely out of place. The flagship was called the Eternal Dawn, and it was more like a floating city than a ship. Crystal spires rose from its decks. Gardens filled with alien plants grew in chambers filled with artificial sunlight. Thousands of walked its corridors, and every single one of them stared at Daniel when he passed. Some stared with wonder, some with suspicion. A few looked at him like he was an insect that had crawled onto their dinner table. Stayed close to him at all times. She had taken her role as his protector very seriously, and Daniel was grateful for it. Without her, he would have gone crazy from the isolation. On the 5th day, Queen summoned him to her private chambers, insisted on coming, and the Queen allowed it without argument. The Queen's rooms were surprisingly simple. Daniel had expected gold and jewels everywhere. Instead, he found plain walls, comfortable furniture, and shelves filled with books and data tablets. It looked almost like a scholar's study. "Sit," the Queen said, gesturing to chairs across from her desk. "We have much to discuss." Daniel sat, remained standing near the door, her hand never far from her weapon. "I want to tell you about the architects," the Queen began. "My people have studied them for 10,000 years. We have built temples to honor them. We have based our laws on what we believe they would have wanted. And yet we still know almost nothing about who they truly were." "What do you know?" Daniel asked. The Queen pulled up a holographic display. It showed a map of the galaxy, with thousands of points of light scattered across it. "The hyperspace gates. There are over 4,000 of them spread across the galaxy. The architects built them. Without the gates, travel between distant stars would take centuries. With them, we can cross the galaxy in weeks. Every spacefaring civilization depends on them." She zoomed in on one particular point. "This is Prime, and this is the final gate. It looks like the other gates, but it has never functioned. No power source we have tried can activate it. No signal we have sent has made it respond. It simply sits there waiting." "Waiting for me," Daniel said quietly. "So the prophecy tells us. The marked one will open the final gate, and through it will come the knowledge to save all life from the coming darkness." "Spoke up. What darkness? You keep mentioning prophecies, but you have not explained what danger everyone is supposed to be saved from." The Queen was quiet for a moment. "The architects left warnings. Something is coming from beyond the edge of the galaxy. Something that destroyed the architects themselves or drove them to flee. The prophecies do not give details. They only say that when the darkness arrives, only the marked one can stop it." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. "So I am supposed to stop some kind of galaxy-destroying threat. I cannot even stop a leaky pipe without the right tools." The Queen almost smiled. Perhaps the architects saw something in humanity that we have not yet learned to see. You are a young species, primitive by our standards, and yet they chose one of you to bear the mark. That must mean something. Before Daniel could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed. The Queen stood quickly, her expression turning hard. "What is happening?" Daniel demanded. A guard rushed into the room. "My Queen, we are under attack. Raiders, 12 ships." The Queen moved toward the door. "Get the marked one to a secure location. Protect him at all costs." "No," Daniel said. Everyone stopped and looked at him. "I am not going to hide in a safe room while other people fight for me. I may not be a soldier, but I can help. I know systems. I know machines. Let me do something useful." The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Very well. Our weapons systems are having targeting problems. Our engineers cannot find the fault. Perhaps you can." Daniel almost laughed. Of course. Even in the middle of a space battle, what they really needed was a maintenance guy. The engineering section of the Eternal Dawn was chaos when Daniel arrived. Engineers shouted at each other in their own language, pulling up schematics and running diagnostics, stayed by his side as he pushed through to the main console. "Show me the problem," he said. A young engineer stared at him with obvious doubt. "You are human. You cannot possibly understand our technology." "Try me." The engineer pulled up a display. Daniel studied it, his mind racing. The systems were more advanced than anything he had worked with before, but the underlying principles were the same. Power flows, data pathways, feedback loops. It was all just engineering dressed up in fancy alien clothes. "There," he said, pointing at a section of the schematic. "You have a resonance feedback building up in your targeting array. The system is fighting itself every time it tries to lock onto a target." The engineer frowned. "That is impossible. That system has redundant buffers to prevent exactly that problem." "Check your buffers. I bet one of them is damaged, maybe from the first attack. It is creating a loop instead of blocking it." The engineer ran a diagnostic. His eyes went wide. "He is correct. Buffer 7 is malfunctioning." "Bypass it. Route through Buffer 8 instead. It will not be perfect, but it will work." The engineers scrambled to make the changes. 30 seconds later, the weapon systems came back online at full power. Through the ship's internal speakers, Daniel heard the sound of weapons firing. The battle continued, but now the Eternal Dawn could fight back. Grabbed his arm. "Look." Through a nearby window, Daniel could see one of the ships exploding as a beam of energy tore through it. The remaining raiders were pulling back, unable to handle the suddenly effective defenses. The battle was over in minutes. They fled into hyperspace, leaving behind 3 destroyed ships. Queen found Daniel in the engineering section, still surrounded by grateful engineers. She looked at him with an expression he had not seen before. Respect. "You saved many lives today," she said. Daniel shrugged. "I just found a broken buffer. Anyone could have done it. But no one else did. My engineers were looking for complex problems. You found the simple answer." She paused. "Perhaps that is what the architects saw in your species. You do not overthink things. You simply fix them." Put a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "He has been doing that for as long as I have known him. Give him a problem, and he finds a way to solve it, no matter how complicated everyone else thinks it is." The Queen nodded slowly. "The final gate has resisted our efforts for 10,000 years. Perhaps we have been approaching it wrong. Perhaps what it needs is not ancient rituals or advanced technology. Perhaps it simply needs someone willing to see it for what it is." Daniel thought about that as the ship resumed its journey toward Prime. He was still terrified of what waited for him there. But for the first time since this madness began, he felt like maybe he could actually do something useful. He was not a hero. He was not a chosen one in any traditional sense. He was just a guy who fixed things. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. Prime was the most beautiful world Daniel had ever seen. The planet was covered in forests of crystal trees that caught the light of twin suns and scattered it into a million rainbows. Cities of silver and glass rose from valleys and clifftops, connected by bridges that seemed to float on nothing but air. Billions of lived here, and as Daniel's shuttle descended toward the capital, he could see crowds gathering in the streets below. "They are all here for you," said quietly, looking out the window. Daniel's stomach twisted. "I was hoping they would not make a big deal out of this." "You are the fulfillment of a 10,000-year-old prophecy. They were always going to make a big deal out of it." The shuttle landed on a platform in front of a massive temple. Queen was waiting for them, dressed in ceremonial robes even more elaborate than before. Behind her stood hundreds of priests, scholars, and nobles. And beyond them, held back by lines of guards, were the crowds. Thousands upon thousands of, all straining to catch a glimpse of the human who bore the mark. When Daniel stepped off the shuttle, the crowd fell silent. Then, as one, they dropped to their knees. Daniel had never felt more uncomfortable in his entire life. The ceremonies lasted for hours. Daniel was paraded through the streets. He was presented to the council of elders. He was blessed by priests who chanted in languages older than human civilization. Through it all, he smiled and nodded and tried not to look as terrified as he felt. Stayed at his side the entire time. She was the only thing keeping him sane. Finally, as the twin suns began to set, Queen led them into the Temple of the Architects. It was the oldest building on the planet, built around the final gate itself. The walls were covered in carvings and writings that no one had ever been able to fully translate. Strange machines hummed in alcoves, their purpose long forgotten. And at the center of it all stood the gate. It was a ring of dark metal, 50 meters across, standing upright on a platform of smooth stone. Unlike the hyperspace gates Daniel had seen before, this one was completely inert. No lights flickered on its surface. No energy hummed through its frame. It was just dead metal waiting. "For 10,000 years we have tried everything," the Queen said softly. "We have fed it power. We have spoken the ancient words. We have performed every ritual described in the texts. Nothing has worked." Daniel walked closer to the gate. He could feel something as he approached. A faint tingling in his skin, like static electricity. The mark, whatever it was, responding to something in the gate's structure. "What am I supposed to do?" he asked. "The prophecy says the marked one will open the gate. It does not say how." Daniel reached out and touched the dark metal. It was warm under his fingers, which surprised him. He had expected it to be cold. He waited for something to happen. Lightning, explosions, mysterious voices. Nothing happened. He tried again, pressing both palms against the surface. Still nothing. Behind him, he heard murmuring from the gathered priests and scholars. They had waited 10,000 years for this moment, and their chosen one was failing. "It is not working," one of the priests said. "Perhaps the humans faked the mark somehow. Perhaps this is all a trick." The Queen silenced him with a look, but Daniel could see the doubt creeping into her eyes too. Pulled him aside. "Hey, ignore them. You just got here. You cannot be expected to figure out million-year-old technology in 5 minutes. What if they are right? What if I am not the real marked one? What if this whole thing is a mistake?" Shook her head. "Then we figure that out. But right now, I think you need to stop trying so hard. When has forcing something ever worked for you?" Daniel thought about that. She was right. In his work, the solutions never came from pushing harder. They came from stepping back, looking at the problem from a different angle, finding the simple answer that everyone else had missed. "I need access to your archives," Daniel said suddenly, turning to the Queen. "Everything you have on the architects, every translation of the prophecy, Every theory your scholars have developed." The queen nodded slowly. "You shall have it." For the next 3 days, Daniel buried himself in research. Helped, even though most of the texts were in languages neither of them could read. Scholars translated for them, and slowly a picture began to form. "Look at this," said on the third night. She was pointing at a passage in one of the oldest texts, the original prophecy. It has been translated dozens of different ways over the centuries. Daniel leaned in. "What did you find?" The word they translate as activate or open. In the original language, it has another meaning: to give, to sacrifice. Daniel felt something click in his mind. The gate does not need power, it needs a sacrifice. He found the queen immediately and showed her what they had discovered. Her face went pale as she read the passage. "A sacrifice," she whispered. "What kind of sacrifice?" Daniel read further. "Not death, something else, a giving up of self, a surrender of connection." He looked up. "If I open this gate, I will not be the same afterward. I will be changed. The prophecy says the marked one becomes a bridge between this universe and whatever lies beyond. But bridges go both ways. Part of me will always be on the other side." The queen was silent for a long moment. "You would lose yourself." "Part of myself, the part that belongs to my old life, my home, my people." Daniel's voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "I would still be me, but I would never be just human again." Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the temple. Guards rushed in with reports. The had returned. Not just raiders this time, an entire fleet. They had allies too, other factions who wanted the power of the gate for themselves. "They are demanding we hand over the human," a guard reported. "They say if we refuse, they will destroy the temple and take him by force." The queen's expression hardened. "How long until they reach weapon range?" 2 hours, maybe less." Daniel looked at the gate, then at the queen. 2 hours. He had 2 hours to decide if he was willing to give up part of himself to save a galaxy that was not even his own. "I need to think," he said. "Please, just give me a few minutes." He walked alone to the edge of the temple, looking out at the crystal forests below. The twin suns were setting, casting long shadows across the land. Somewhere up there, ships were gathering to destroy everything he could see. He thought about Ohio, about his parents who were probably worried sick, about the simple life he had left behind, about all the things he would never be able to go back to if he opened that gate. And then he thought about the crowds kneeling in the streets, about the engineers on the ship, grateful that he had saved their lives, about who had followed him across the galaxy just because he asked. He thought about what it meant to fix things, not just machines but problems, situations, lives. He had spent his whole life being ordinary because he was afraid to be anything else. He had always told himself that he was not special, that someone else would handle the big problems. But there was no one else, not this time. Daniel turned and walked back into the temple, was waiting for him, her face full of concern. "I know what I have to do," he said. "Daniel, you do not have to sacrifice yourself for these people. They are not your responsibility." He smiled at her. "Maybe not, but they are people and I can help them. That is enough." He walked toward the gate. Behind him, he could hear following and the queen and the priests who had doubted him. He did not look back. This time when he touched the gate, he did not try to force anything. He simply opened himself up to it. He thought about what he was willing to give, his connection to his old life, his certainty about who he was, his comfortable limitations. The gate began to glow. The light from the gate spread outward like ripples in a pond. It washed over Daniel first, then everyone else in the temple. It did not burn or hurt. It felt like stepping into warm sunlight after a long winter. Daniel could feel himself changing. The mark in his DNA was waking up, unfolding like a flower that had waited millions of years to bloom. Knowledge flooded into his mind. Not words or images, but understanding. He suddenly knew how the hyperspace gates worked. He knew how to build machines that could reshape planets. He knew secrets that they had spent 10,000 years trying to discover. But he also felt something else. A connection stretching across impossible distances to somewhere beyond the edge of the galaxy. The architects were not dead. They had not fled. They had simply moved on to another level of existence, waiting for the right moment to return. And now, through Daniel, they could reach back. Daniel's voice cut through the overwhelming sensations. She grabbed his arm, grounding him. "Stay with me. Do not lose yourself in there." He focused on her voice, on her grip, on the simple human contact. The flood of knowledge slowed to a manageable stream. He was still himself, changed but not lost. The gate was fully active now. Energy swirled within the ring, forming a window to somewhere else. Through it, Daniel could see stars that no one in this galaxy had ever seen. He could see structures of light and thought that explanation. He could see the architects themselves, vast and ancient and patient. They spoke to him, not in words but in ideas that formed directly in his mind. "You have done well, child of Earth. You found the simple answer that eluded all others. The gate did not need power or ritual. It needed willingness. It needed someone humble enough to give instead of take." Daniel answered them the same way. "Why me? Why humans? Because your species is young enough to still believe in impossible things. Because you have not yet learned to limit yourselves. Because when you see a problem, you try to fix it, even when everyone tells you it cannot be fixed. We needed someone who would not give up. Someone who would not accept that the gate was broken simply because no one else could open it." Outside the temple, the battle had begun. Daniel could hear explosions in the distance as the fleet engaged the defenders. The enemy ships were pushing toward the planet, trying to reach the temple before it was too late. "What do I do now?" Daniel asked the architects. "What you have always done, fix things." Knowledge flowed through him again, but this time he directed it. He reached out through the connection he now shared with the gate and touched the defense network. He saw their ships, their weapons, their shields. He saw the fleet bearing down on them. And he saw how to stop it. Energy burst from the gate in a wave that swept across the planet and into space. It was not a weapon. It was something older and more powerful. A signal that resonated through every hyperspace gate in the sector. The ships began to drift. Their engines sputtered and died. Their weapons went offline. Every system that depended on hyperspace technology simply stopped working. "What did you do?" the Queen demanded, staring at the suddenly motionless battle above. "I reminded them that they are guests in a house the architects built," Daniel said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, layered, like more than one person was speaking at once. "The gates give. They can also take away." The fleet hung dead in space. Within hours, ships would round them up. The battle was over before it truly began. But Daniel knew that was not the real victory. The real victory was what came next. He turned to face the gathered, priests and scholars and nobles who had doubted him, warriors who had fought to protect him, the queen who had knelt before him and then learned to see him as something more than a prophecy. "The architects did not leave because they were afraid," he said. "They left because they knew their time was over. They built the gates. They seeded life across the galaxy. And then they stepped back to let those lives grow on their own." He paused, gathering his thoughts. The architect's knowledge hummed in the back of his mind, available whenever he needed it, but not overwhelming anymore. "The darkness the prophecy mentioned is real. Something is coming from beyond the edge of the galaxy. The architects could not stop it, so they left behind the gates and the mark and the prophecy. They left behind a chance for the younger species to succeed where they failed." "How?" the Queen asked. "If the architects themselves could not defeat this threat, how can we?" Daniel smiled. It was the same smile he had worn 1,000 times before, facing a broken machine that everyone else said could not be fixed. The architects were old. They were set in their ways. They had forgotten how to try new things. He looked at who was watching him with tears in her eyes. Humans are good at new things. We have to be. We have only been in space for a few centuries. Everything is new to us. He turned back to the Queen. You asked me once why the architects chose a human. This is why. Because we are too young to know what is supposed to be impossible. Because we will try things that older species would never consider. Because sometimes the answer to an ancient problem is not more wisdom, it is fresh eyes. The Queen was silent for a long moment. Then slowly she extended her hand, not in the gesture of submission she had made when she first saw him, in the human gesture of greeting, of equals meeting for the first time. Daniel shook her hand. The Empire has waited 10,000 years for this moment, the Queen said. We thought we were waiting for a god. Instead, we found a maintenance engineer from Ohio. She almost smiled. Perhaps that is better. Stepped forward and put her hand on Daniel's shoulder. So what happens now? Daniel thought about it. The knowledge of the architects settled into place in his mind, no longer foreign or overwhelming. He was still Daniel Porter. He still liked fixing things and hated ceremonies and missed the simple life he had left behind. But he was also something more now, a bridge between what was and what could be, a connection between the wisdom of the past and the potential of the future. Now we get to work, he said. There is a galaxy to protect and a lot of things that need fixing. The architects gave us the tools. It is up to us to use them. He looked out through the temple doors at the crystal forests of Prime. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of known space, something dark was moving toward them. But for the first time since this whole crazy adventure started, Daniel was not afraid. He had never been able to fix things by worrying about them. He fixed things by rolling up his sleeves and getting started. Some things, it turned out, were the same whether you were unclogging a pipe or saving the galaxy. Laughed at something he could not hear, and the Queen began issuing orders to her people, and the scholars crowded around the now glowing gate with wonder in their eyes. Daniel watched it all with a quiet smile. He was still just a guy who fixed things. He always would be. The only difference was that now his toolkit included the secrets of an ancient civilization, a connection to beings beyond the stars, and the trust of an entire galaxy. It was a lot of responsibility, but Daniel figured he would handle it the same way he handled everything else. One problem at a time.